official now. Come on. Call the meeting to order. Welcome the City of Hagerstown's a special planning commission meeting of today, December 20th, 2021. Roll call, we have a full house. Chris Davis, Tamara Martinez, Jim Stone, Ron Thomas, Judy Wheeler, Shelley McIntyre, and myself, Chairman Doug Wright. Also on the call, we have Kathy Marr, Director of Planning and Code Administration, as well as Steve Bachmiller, Development Review Planner and Zoning Administrator. Do I have everybody?
Okay.
Didn't miss anybody? All righty. We have two items on our agenda today, both of which are Planning Commission business. The first one is the discussion and formulate a recommendation to Mayor and Council regarding proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan. Of course, we've been reviewing this for some time. Have we had any additional input from anyone following our last meeting on this?
We haven't heard from anyone from the public, but we looked into Doug's inquiry about a road connecting over to All-Star Court. And we reached out to the engineering department, and we have a sketch or a map alternative for your consideration that Megan can put up on the screen, which was not in the packet. It's fresh off the presses. But something you need to take into consideration. See the new red line that runs across over to All-Star Court in the sort of center there on the map. See the new red line?
Yep.
The only development that benefits is All-Star Court, because the plan with the Dow Farm intersection improvements that we all saw many months ago that State Highways approved would put a light over by the Hamilton property, not at the All-Star Court. So if someone, it's unlikely we would get the developer of that land to build a road over to All-Star Court that's only benefiting All-Star Court. So that's something to consideration. If we have it on the plan, it's going to suggest that developer of that raw land over there owned by Hamilton needs to build this road running over to All-Star so that the All-Star people can come onto their property to get to their road. So it's a little, I don't know whether it's too late now for this or what.
I fully understand what you're saying, and it might not be a good idea to put it on here.
Okay.
Yeah. What does everybody else think? To refresh your memory a little bit, when the developer of All-Star Court started talking about his two hotels and businesses on the west or northwest side of All-Star Court, and someone can circle all that again for me. He dedicated some right of way, but the city must have asked to dedicate right of way. I don't, somebody can help me with that, but it's on the site plans for the hotel, and it's been there for a while, and that's why I keep remembering and keep bringing it up. But if it's only going to serve his development, then someone else is going to have to build that, and we just ought to take it off. I agree with Kathy on that.
That makes sense to me.
I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody opposed to that? Want to talk about some more?
Now, correct me now, you're saying if he wants to put that in, he has to build it himself. Is that correct?
And acquire land from the people to the north to do it. If we show it on the plan as something that comp plan's recommending, then when people develop, there's Hamilton owned raw land there on the sort of south side of Emmert. Then would suggest that when they're ready to develop, they need to build that road because the comp plan recommends it, but it doesn't serve their development. It would serve the All-Star Court development.
So if we don't show it on the plan, then they don't have to develop it. Is that correct?
Right.
Our subdivision and land development ordinance says that if a right-of-way is shown on the comprehensive plan transportation map, that the least they're going to do is dedicate the right-of-way, if not be required to build it. But that provision only kicks in as if that road alignment is shown on this map.
The question is, do we want that road alignment shown on the map?
The question.
Well, it doesn't look like it really gives any value to the city, because that road that's coming from the Dow farm is going to come very close to where All-Star Court comes out. So it really doesn't improve. I don't see traffic flow. And that interchange is not a full interchange either. It's just right in, right out on westbound US 40. So I hope I'm correct on that. I'm pretty sure I am. So
Well, if
Yes.
that's the case, then let's not include it in there if it doesn't have any probative value.
Yep, that's basically what I was saying also, and Kathy was recommending.
Then, so you're looking for a motion not to include it.
Well, it never was added.
Yeah, it's up
Okay.
for discussion today. As a result of Doug's questions in the hearing and in the previous meeting about, well, what about that road? When we were talking about a road, when we were looking at the hotels for All-Star Court.
And the staff has answered with this and doesn't seem to need to go any further.
Well, I agree.
So our package as it stands does not include this. right?
That's right. All right, so we won't include it. I don't think we need a vote or anything else.
Okay.
Thank you for bearing that and showing that to us. So then the only really testimony we got is the one at the night of the meeting from Fred Frederick. Is that correct?
Right, and he was just letting us know that they were designing the R. Paul Smith road work in the Harrison track.
But he had some concerns and he had brought them up. I am sure if this goes on, when this goes on to the mayor and council, he'll be presenting these same concerns to them.
For the land management code.
This is,
His
Oh, I'm
concerns
sorry.
were with the land management code.
they were, I'm getting ahead of myself, twist around.
He didn't have-
Okay.
He didn't have any concerns about the comprehensive plan on it.
No.
That was the land, I apologize. That was the land management code. All right, we're doing the transportation. So we've had no input then at all on the transportation.
No,
Okay. Does anybody want to address anything in that addition we haven't before? Or readdress anything? Hearing none, I guess I'll entertain a motion to make a recommendation to the mayor and council to consider and approve these revisions to the comprehensive plan.
So moved. This is Chris.
Okay,
Second, Ron.
Second.
all right, we got everybody motioning second, take your pick. I don't think we have anybody opposed. So I'll just call for a vote anyhow, just for the record. All those in favor of making that recommendation, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there
And-
anybody?
Abstain.
Okay, is anybody opposed? And one abstention. Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll move on to what I was trying to do. and that is the land management code. Have we had any other testimony on the land management code revisions since our last meeting?
We have not.
Okay. Steve, you want to present your handy dandy sketch and just to go over and see if anybody's got any questions?
Yeah, at a meeting, before you sent this to public hearing, I had presented you all a illustration that would go in with the setback chart in the residential districts, illustrating how a one-story L to serve a rear load garage, rear loading to an alley, would have an exception to extend closer into the rear setback. I drew it as a elevation. In other words, if you're looking at it 30 yards away, looking at it along the landscape, and you all asked me to convert it to an overhead view. This is the draft that I have done up. The version, if you're okay with it, the version that goes to the mayor and council will be more professional looking than this, but this gets you where you need to go for approving basic illustration. It shows a lot, the four walls of the lot, the house, the one-story L on the rear, which is for a one or two car garage. And then the red lines are the setback lines. 35 feet is the rear setback in the R mod district, 30 feet in the R med RH districts. And then there's a 20-foot rear setback in the cluster requirements. And basically what this would do is if you're putting a rear garage L on a single family home in the R mod, R med, RH, it can go as close as 20 feet to the rear property line. It'd be one story. There's certain limitations on it, so you still have a usable rear yard area, but it cuts down on the mass of driveway space. So if you have these could be standard 7,500 square foot or larger lots. So in theory, you could end up having a lot more driveway than you need getting to the attached rear load garage. So this allows a one-story L to go as close as 20 feet to the rear property line. We chose 20 feet because a parking space is 18 feet. So we don't think there would be any, if they go to the maximum distance closest to the alley, it'll be exactly a typical car length. Or a little bit more, parking space length, I should say.
Steve, I thank you for doing that. Because that's something I asked for, but can I ask whether we can do both drawings so that you can get a total perspective of what we're talking about?
Absolutely.
I think both of them would be better, and a picture's worth 1,000 words, so you can really show what we're talking about that way.
We can definitely do that.
Any questions? Comments? Okay. Now, getting to the track that I was trying to get to by mistake, and that is that Fred Frederick did present us some concerns at our meeting. And I'm sure that when this appears in front of mayor and council, he will probably do the same. And I think it'd be wise for us to record our thoughts and our reactions to those concerns for the record. If in fact we do go ahead and approve this.
Could I summarize what he said?
Yeah, I have it in front of me, but you go ahead.
In short, these are all wonderful ideas, just don't do it.
In all fairness to Fred,
I think
I don't think that's a fair summary of what he said.
that I agree with all that, but don't you think we should address each point individually, or do you think we can just defend ourselves with that statement to the mayor and council?
Sure.
Which one? Sure. First question or second question?
Point by
Well,
point.
I'm thinking that what's going to happen when he presents it to the mayor and council is that he's going to hit each one of those points. And they're going to want a more definitive clarification of each one of those points. And it might come back to us.
He
That's,
wants to leave it as strictly at the option of the developer. And that's how I came to my very bulleted description of his concerns, because if it's left as it is to the discretion of the developer, 9 times out of 10, they're probably not going to be inclined to do it. They're only going to live up to the minimum standards that our ordinances expect. And right now, our ordinances do not put the emphasis on traditional design. So if it's left to be continued to be strictly at the discretion of the developer, then all of the work that we put into this really is going to go for nothing.
and that is the reason why I think we need to address these as he presented them to us, not in a
Okay.
summary format, so
Well,
that
I'd
we
like-
do have that ability to protect this.
Well, I'd like to go on the record. I was not comfortable with the language with respect to this particular part of the amendments. In the beginning, I didn't say much about it at the time, but I thought more about it. And I think some of the comments that Fred made sort of crystallized that. I think it is wrong. I just think it's flat wrong for us to go this far in mandating that basically you have to do it a certain way unless you can demonstrate some compelling reason not to. I think that puts us in the position of mandating a preferential style of housing, and I think that that's wrong. And by the way, I'm not against, I mean, some of you know that, I mean, I am a partner in Greenwich Park, and we were the first people to do this type of design in the city with project, and I think it's a great idea. I don't think, however, that all developers in all situations should be required to do it. And Steve, if I think there's a difference between doing nothing at all and basically imposing our own design preferences, by fiat. And I just.
With all due respect, that's what our ordinances are specifically enacted to do.
No, they're not, Steve. I mean, this is not Williamsburg. We provide guidance, we provide standards and all that, but I don't think we've ever gone as far, at least not in the years I've been on the planning commission, and saying that you have to design a subdivision a certain way. One particular type of design, no others are permissible. I don't think we've done that. And if we have, then I think we made a mistake. I think we shouldn't do this.
Well, the ordinance is written where it says that what you see on the left of your screen, the right of your screen is the preferred way, but it still leaves the situation open to where if it doesn't seem to work at a particular location, then they can come to you all and discuss it. You've already done it once with Dave Lyles' property down on the very eastern end of town there, that RH property. What this does is it sets what the expectation is, and it puts this body more in the control seat rather than the developer. And they're welcome to come to you all and discuss whether or not a more suburban design is more appropriate at a given location. But without this, we've wasted all of our efforts essentially, because
Well, now, wait a minute, Steve. The important thing is not whether we've wasted our efforts. The important thing is that we get it right. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. Maybe we didn't think this through as much as we should have. And I think Fred's pointed out some things that I hadn't thought of that are good points. And that we ought to be open to re-examining that in that light, not just saying, well, we can't change this because if we do, we've wasted our time.
Help me with some terminology here. I believe the proposed ordinance says preferred, not required.
It says the existing ordinance says preferred. what the proposed ordinance says is priority.
Priority or expected, yeah.
Expected. I mean, I think that term is fair, which means you have to do it that way or demonstrate something like, I guess, what you would do in order to get a variance. You have to show some fundamental reason why it won't work. And that, to me, what's wrong about that is that who are we to say that only one type of subdivision is appropriate in this city?
Well, keep in mind that the way the ordinance is currently written and has been written for going on 15 years now actually does this. If you look at the language on page 19 of the package that went to your hearing, what we're doing is we're making minor tweaks to the existing language. The existing language already pushes us toward traditional neighborhood design. But what we found was the existing language, because of some weasel words, made it difficult to enforce. We're changing the word preferred to priority. It's not an absolute, but it puts the developer on notice that the expectation, unless you can show us otherwise, is what you see in the right-hand photo versus the left-hand photo.
Well, I mean, my feeling is that it's a rule that when you talk about enforcement, that's telling a developer, you want to do business in this city, you do it our way or the highway. And so many work. Now, I understand you can make justifications, but I think Fred's right. What some developers are going to do, they're going to say, you know what, this isn't worth it. Why should we develop in the city when we can develop in the surrounding areas and not have to put up with this kind of these mandates? I mean, if it ultimately ought to be determined by what the market tends to prefer. And, you know, creative designs like the ones that you guys saw when you went up to Pennsylvania, they can work. So can a Greenwich Park. But I don't think it's right to say that they're the only things.
One of the reasons why developers would like to develop in the city is, first, they don't have to pay impact fees. And secondly, they can get city water and city sewer. There's the two strong reasons to build in the city. So maybe we can get something in return for that.
Staff's position is it's time to up our expectations.
Well, I understand the position, and I may be the only one on the commission that feels this way, but I think that we've gone perhaps one step too far.
Whatever gets built is going to be there for 200 years.
Yeah, and that's another
Which
thing.
picture do you want?
I'm not so sure, Steve, that I agree with your assessment about, you know, some of the housing that you were referring to in the near West End and all. I mean, true, some of that looks pretty trashy because it has not been well maintained. But actually, from a design standpoint, I just don't think that it's. I think to look down at that and say this is wrong, this is not what our city is all about, you know, that's wrong. Our city reflects a whole range of different styles and different periods, and it's not for. I mean, it's not for us to sort of say for all eternity what something should look like. Again, this isn't Williamsburg.
I was only pointing out the houses in the West End as far as construction expectations. The layouts of the development in the West End are actually more toward what our ordinance currently pushes. The only reason why I pointed out examples in the West End were the life expectancy of the houses. If you look at those houses, they're there 130 years, and they were not the best construction even when they were built. And I'm not criticizing that, it's just the way it was. And I'm just pointing out that here we are 130 to 150 years later, and those houses are still occupied and will be occupied into the foreseeable future. They probably were never built with that intention. So all I was doing is using that as an example to point out that whatever gets built to modern current building standards today is going to last every bit as long or longer than those houses. I wasn't trying to cast any aspersions on those houses. It's just they were a product of what they were. Houses during a quick building boom associated with one industry and houses got built quickly. And here
Well,
they are still there 130, 150 years later being used.
But I don't think, I mean, if there's a wrong in all that, what's wrong is that some of the housing has fallen into poor repair and all that, and that's a shame. But we, of course, we have other ordinances that deal with that. If we're talking about the design, I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of different designs reflected in this city.
Well, like I said, all I was talking about was life expectancy. When you come down to design, those houses in the West End are actually more in line with what we're trying to push with the current subdivision ordinance.
Well, but the language in the code that we're talking about, really, this isn't a life expectancy issue. It's a preference for how you want the look and feel of the subdivision to be. You know, and I understand your thinking on the subject. Anyway, I don't want to be the only one speaking.
This is now becoming a two-way debate here. Can I just have a rough reaction from everybody else? Should we pitch this now, or should we go forward?
So this is Chris. You know, I've been struck about my time serving on the different commissions in the city of Hagerstown. The flexibility that we have shown to developers who have said to us, you know, we can't meet your requirements. How many variances do we approve in a year's time? I think in my time on the Historic District Commission, we only did not approve 2% of the cases that came before us. I think it's a reasonable expectation for our community. You know, almost a generation after these types of developments first appeared in the state of Maryland as new, even though our town was built originally this way, that we set some expectations for developers that are higher standards, that every time we do this, we try to ask for something a little bit more. You know, as many of you know, I came from Prince George's County, where the county didn't start doing that until maybe 20 years ago. And we have, you know, the county is suffering for it now. I would like to see us, you know, talk about priorities that we have as a community, and then let somebody say to us, but it's not going to work, and here's how I'm going to do it, and, you know, it'll be fine, versus saying we're just going to give up, you know, throw up our hands and say, you know, we're not going to try to do anything more.
Yeah, I would really like to echo what Chris has said, and I would say that also based on having lived in other counties in Maryland. And I agree that we've always shown flexibility, but this is also our opportunity to show some, you know, we've been showing coherence and all the time. I've been on the Planning Commission also. I mean, we're here to help move things forward in a way. What we see is best. We listen to everything. We've worked a lot on this way. And I think keeping these standards does set an expectation that other people can negotiate, but it shows the direction we see this going in to benefit the city of Hagerstown. And I think we've invested a lot in our time and staff's time in bringing forth this view over several years.
I think we want to look at the future, not look in the past. These type developments are very successful in other communities. Now, someone could easily say, well, those communities are more affluent, but we don't want to cut Hagerstown short and say we'll never be affluent. We want to be able to provide housing for the future. And I really don't like backyards out on the road. I like the concept of alleys, and it worked in this city for years and years and years. I don't see why we can't state this and go forward with this.
Folks, when I was talking earlier, I referred to a couple of pictures, but they may not have been up on the screen earlier. Do you see two housing photos on your screen?
We do now.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So can we go forward then with Fred's comments, or do you just want to lump them together? I would recommend we address each one of them individually. Otherwise, we will be unrepresented except for staff in front of the mayor and council.
We can address them individually if you like, sure.
I think we ought to also, because he had a lot of diverse opinions of what should be done, and I don't think you can lump all those together in one response.
I think it will lose, that one response will be lost in the summary. I just think they need to be addressed because he's going to bring them up individually. And I think we need to address them individually.
Okay.
We're all okay with that?
Yes.
I agree.
His first point was by making new subdivisions, have both a front street and a rear loaded access, parentheses alley, we will greatly increase the imperviousness of all new developments. This goes against Maryland's design standard of trying to reduce the impervious footprint and add decreasing stormwater runoff. This will increase stormwater runoff. And then I'll combine the next one. This will nearly double the cost of street and stormwater construction cost, thus increasing the cost of the house to the homeowner. Now, on the surface, he's got a valid point, but that does not mean that that's going a reducing or not having alleys is the appropriate design for us to go forward. And stormwater management is needed, but the developer can dump that stormwater management into cleaning areas and open stormwater ponds before it gets on into the streams. So his collection system would just direct it to stormwater management structures, open structures. Doesn't have to go all the way back to the creek in concrete.
One thing that I find interesting is mentioning this about the statewide standards. It'd be curious to see what the reaction is of other more dense and urban areas. I find it very hard to believe that they are transitioning to suburban design subdivisions over this issue. I seriously doubt that.
No, they're just building structures they'll be able to handle and clean the water before it hits the streams. I think that allowing this to interfere with us going forward with a more upscale housing development is wrong. We still have open space, still have green. Well, yes, we'll have concrete. Yes, we'll have blacktop. But we can direct that. The developer can direct that to appropriate stormwater management facilities, just as this developer did up there in Pennsylvania.
So, go ahead, Steve.
Another thing to take into account on this particular issue is that we at staff level are looking very actively at coming up with revised sections for roads and alleys that keep the width of those roads and alleys to the bare minimum absolutely necessary for the fire department. They have been exceptionally gracious in working with us. And we think that for the most part, we're all kind of on the same page. We just had a meeting this morning with Chief Lohr and Jim Bender to kind of set what those standards are. They're really not changing a whole lot because more of our current standards are still actually relatively narrow. Looking at like the street that you see in this photograph, we're looking at two 10-foot drive aisles and a 7-foot parking aisle. on one side. So that's a 27-foot wide street. That's roughly what the cul-de-sacs are out in Hager's Crossing. Ignore the cul-de-sac bulb at the end, but the actual neck of the cul-de-sac is about that width. And then it would be another 7 feet if you're going to have parking on both sides of the street. So it'd be a 34-foot wide width if you have parking on both sides. And then we are also looking at for some roads, if they have adequate parking in the back, to have no parking on either side. It'd just be 2 lanes of traffic, and that would be a 20-foot wide road. And then some of those 25-foot wide roads, in theory, could become open space areas. It may not even be roads, may not even become roads to begin with. Just depends on how the developer decides to build them. We're trying to write these standards to be extremely flexible, where they can be applied with a standard subdivision, but also cluster design subdivisions as well. But we are looking into all that to make sure that the standards that do get adopted, new standards, are the minimum absolutely necessary for fire trucks and garbage trucks. That includes alleys.
What is the width for alleys that's being considered now?
The width for alleys is,
It's currently
what
12,
was it, 16?
12 foot, right now it's 12-foot pavement, 15-foot wide right of way. And we're looking at making it a little bit wider than that to better accommodate fire trucks.
See, I don't get that at all is that's not what our alleys look like in the city now at all. They're much narrower than that.
Yeah.
And is it even necessary that fire trucks be able to negotiate the alleys? I mean,
It is last week, today's meeting was a follow-up, Kathy again. Today's meeting was a follow-up on a meeting we had last Wednesday where engineers and planners went out to and met with the fire department with a ladder truck and a pumper so we could see what their turning radius was. And then we piled into these trucks and they drove us around the West End. What they were explaining to us is when they have a fire, particularly with dense housing, they want to be able to get on the front and the back if they can. Some of the West End alleys, it's not possible. In fact, we got stuck in one, but that's their preferred way to fight a fire so they can knock it down quickly before it gets a chance to spread to other houses.
if we're going to have 16-foot alleys, then I think then whether you folks agree with the merit, I mean, the overall weight of this, but he is right. I mean, that's going to lead to more impervious surfaces than a traditional street design.
It was more important for the fire department that the right of way was wide enough that you didn't have the encroachments coming in on the side, so that the things that overhang can overhang and that the outriggers can go out. Like when you have, one thing they were pointing out too, it's really important, not just for alleys, but for streets, is to be careful what you have in the path of where they have to swing when they're going from one road into another, not to allow the parking to get too close to the intersection and not to have obstructions in that tree pit, like fire hydrants or signs in that court where they're trying to curve, because they're going to overhang with part of the truck over that grass area to make tight turns. And if you have stuff in there, you need to be careful about pushing, you have to push stuff a little bit further away from the intersection so they can swing. And it was pretty amazing how they could swing into some narrow areas. But if you have obstructions like cars too close or things in the green area too close, then they can't maneuver. They have to back up and come forward again.
Steve, can you show a picture of one of the alleys in this development?
In this development here,
The one we went to visit.
the one we went to visit, okay.
So while Steve's doing that, I just want to jump in and say that the city's been very helpful in coming out to us property owners that have a lot of our lot covered with impervious surface, and have been talking to us about on our own properties doing things to mitigate, some of what we're causing to stormwater runoff. And I think that's something that we could talk to developers about on individual properties. For example, my house was built in 1907. I have a contemporary to new build cistern in my front yard that we didn't know about until very recently. So we're looking at that. We've talked to the state about rainwater barrels taking up, talked to the city about taking up the concrete that we're really not using in the yard. And so I think that there's ways that we can look at this too on each individual lot. We don't have to just rely on, the alleys maybe being an issue.
You're not going to get a view down as alley. We don't have pictures, huh? Okay, that shows it.
There we go. That's it.
No curbs, no gutters. I don't even know if there are drains in the
Our
center.
drains, there's a drain right there.
Drain. So there
Yeah.
is a pipe running down the center of that alley. Just like many alleys in the city. They catch water and take it on out. And
There it is.
yeah,
You went over it, Steve.
so
I'm just curious as to how wide that is.
I did measure it when we were
That
down.
doesn't look like 12 feet. but-
we don't owe it to anybody to make our homes cheap. We're inexpensive. We're inexpensive to build and expensive to buy. We can set standards that the buyer, the seller can't sell them. There's another problem, but I don't think we should be anticipating that this is going to be a problem. I'm not saying all that just right, but I just, we do need to be concerned and address impervious surfaces. But we don't need to do it to such extent as we build products that are not for our future.
Well,
This is
and
another
also
development.
what-
This is called Huntfield down in Charlestown, which is traditional neighborhood design. A very good layout, but the lots are tiny.
Huntfield, yeah. Okay.
But the fire chief said he would have absolutely no trouble getting equipment down these alleys.
Then if that's the case, why do we need to have them 16 feet wide?
Well, it's only 3 feet wider than they are now, and you need some space for the outriggers.
It's this area here that he's talking
Okay, but
about.
then I'm hearing something's very inconsistent here because you're telling me that the fire chief says going down these alleys will be fine. These alleys are a lot narrower than what he wants to mandate that we do in our city. So something's wrong. There's an inconsistency there.
I think Steve said that the fire chief said he can get down the alleys, but then he'd have a tough time getting the outriggers out.
He
The
said he would-
outriggers end to end are 18 feet. But he said that he can set up on driveway aprons and stuff as he goes down the alley. So he doesn't need a full 18 feet of paving. The trucks themselves are only about a little over 8 feet wide.
We certainly don't want a truck to tip over.
Correct.
The thing there is, it's two things. You need to have the outriggers out so you can use the full extension of your equipment to the side. You can use that truck without the outriggers, but then you have drastically reduced the reach of your equipment. That's where the problem is. You can get it down there, but you may not be able to reach the fire because the piece of equipment can't extend the operating mechanism to generate the force of the hose that you want to use. There are other things to look at other than actually the physical size of the equipment. It's what can be done with it.
Chief Laura said he had no problem with these alleys, traveling them and functioning within them.
Okay. Well, Jim has a good point then.
And just to point out one thing, one of the things that we talked about when we went and did the field visits up in Pennsylvania is we were talking about two-way traffic on alleys. And what we're finding is the staff level conclusion is that two-way alleys is more problem than it is benefit. And we should stick with one-way alleys, because otherwise you're going up to a 16 to 18 foot wide alley, and it's just really not necessary. So these would be one-way alleys.
Now, again, for what it's worth, this is not how our city looks and is built. Our city has alleys of this width that are two-way alleys, and people, use the right-of-way areas that aren't paved, and they get around each other when they need to. I mean,
Not all of our alleys are two-way.
huh? I'm sorry?
Not all of the alleys are two-way.
Well, most of them are, at least the ones in the neighborhoods that I've lived in, and they're not wide enough for two cars to completely pass unless somebody pulls partly off. But I don't think, since that's worked for all these years, why not build that into the way we design these things? It would make it more economical for both the developer and for the city.
Staff would suggest one thing. We're talking about how wide an alley should be, which is really not part of the text amendment. We can debate those nuances later. The question is I think we need to get back to the bigger picture. And we can talk about how wide an alley needs to be later, because that's really not part of the package. We're not sending a recommendation on road sections to the mayor and council.
No, but we're going down a path, which is fine if the commission wants to do it, that inevitably will have that as a consequence. I think if anybody here, we're kidding ourselves if we think we're going to end up with alleys like we just saw in that development in Pennsylvania. Not from what I'm hearing that everybody wants to do. Well, anyway,
When
Like you said.
it comes time to be looking at, because it's the engineering department's public ways standards that sets this stuff. When it comes time to making adjustments, we could have the engineering department and the fire chief come to a planning commission meeting to talk over it, because our shop doesn't review the public way standards. That's entirely handled by engineering, but we could get the planning commission involved with a discussion on those issues when it comes time to make those adjustments. Get planning commission input in addition to planning staff and fire staff input.
So a possible answer to us for these first 2 points from Fred would be that there is a possibility that we're increasing impervious footprint, but we think the design is still worthy of this, and future modifications to our standards will minimize that increase.
That sounds good to me.
Can you say that one more time, Doug?
Oh, no.
Trying to take
Okay.
minutes.
All right. I think, the alley system will, in a lot of cases, increase the impervious surfaces. But as we go forward with this, which we feel is still a desired residential development standard, not mandatory, but desired, that further revisions to the city ordinances will minimize that environmental impact of impervious surfaces.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I really do.
When it comes to these designs, by the way, one of the things that that Chief Lore liked is these bump outs. It forces people not to park on the too close to the intersection. Basically, what you have is a parking bay, a parallel parking bay that's recessed a little bit. and your turning your radii at the intersection is out as far as it can be based on the engineering.
And assuming that that design is such that the truck can actually make that turn without going up on that bump out, is that correct?
That's correct. It will not be a
Okay.
problem.
Now, can I stay on course here?
Mhm.
All right. Fred's next point is this will also increase the cost of design. And now you have to design both a front street and a rear alley. We understand that. And that's a reasonable problem that designers can work with. There are many, many, many things in designing subdivisions that will both increase and decrease design costs.
Sure.
We just don't want someone hanging their hat just on the increases. We okay with that statement or something close to it?
Mhm.
Yes.
Anybody want to say anything about it? Next point, if alleys are to be used as rear loaded, will there be a change in the city's current alley width design standards so that two-way traffic can pass in the alley? We're not addressing alley width or two-way directionals in this particular document. Those details have yet to be worked out with city staff.
I think right now we ought to stick to what we were discussing as far as one-way alleys and address the other issue that you just discussed, presented
Okay.
when that time comes.
Is trash collection being proposed in the rear portion of lots? This also makes the need for wider alleys. We're not requiring trash collection in the rear, are we?
It's a presumption that if you got an alley, that's where the trash trucks are going to go.
Well,
But
they
it's
don't-
not a requirement.
It's not a requirement. In the
Right.
city, they don't collect in the city in the alleys.
Nope.
Not where I live.
No, they do not.
No.
Of course, we don't have any alleys.
Oh, well,
They don't collect in my alley.
My understanding is that they don't collect in the alleys in the established part of the city because most of the alley widths and the turning radii at intersections of alleys are insufficient for modern garbage trucks.
Sure.
quite frankly, I would like to see trash in the back, collected in the back. And you can just go down Locust Street on trash day and see why.
Yes. Well, especially downtown.
Yes.
I think what we can do is come up with language for this memo saying that one of the several intents of going to traditional design with rear load alleys is for rear load service, including garbage collection. But would it be absolutely required? There's nothing in our ordinance that specifically requires it, but you design it, it's like the stadium, design it and they will come. You have alleys, that's where people are going to have their garbage collected.
It'd be nice if it was there. But it's not, we don't know until we get to the actual animal. Unless, right? Or are we,
Keep in mind, these are single family homes and they would be within the city. If they're within the city, they're going to be handled through the city's garbage collection. And I think the city engineer's office, or I believe they're still the keepers of the trash collection system.
Yes,
They would tell the trash collection companies, you got these brand new alleys, are wide enough for your equipment, use them. We have leverage.
so the answer to Fred's question is yes,
Yes.
but we're working on alley widths. Will the alleys be HOA maintained or city maintained?
Well, that you answered at the last meeting, which I wasn't aware of. That apparently the city does maintain the alleys in the city, but it's not,
Doesn't plow.
doesn't plow. Now, it's gonna have to do that if you're gonna have, things like trash collection.
You know where the city's engineers stand on that now, currently?
We do not.
Yet to be determined.
Well, I
The
think
other
we talked
question
about
is-
it, that there might be some flexibility depending on the development.
The cities that the city do require trash collection in the alleys, do they plow those alleys that they're responsible for?
We don't collect any trash in the alley right now,
Okay,
And it
except
can-
for, except for in the central parking lot, Public Works picks up trash in that one area of town.
now, in my subdivision, the city picks up both the yard waste and the trash.
yeah,
But not in an alley.
Oh, no, not in an alley, no.
the current alleys that we have in the city can't be plowed either because there's a dip in the center.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. The drainage.
There's a time when the city basically lets you pull almost anything out to be taken away that you want. I can just see, an alley full of things like old furniture and so the city's gonna have to take away.
Okay, some of these things I think have to be determined later. Is the city engineering department in favor of increasing impervious developments by requiring alleys? Don't know the answer to that. Will the city maintain the alleys if there is not an HOA? I think the answer is yes. Will the city plow the alleys? Currently, they're not plowed or plowed last. If they're designed so they'll be plowed, right? If they're owned by the city. Do we have answers to that?
All of the paved alleys in the city are part of the city alley network. It's just that we do not plow them.
Right.
When they fall to pieces, we maintain them.
My understanding is they're not plowed for one primary reason, which you wouldn't think of. And that is that they do not have plows that plow convex alleys.
Mhm.
City Police Department in favor of alleys? Don't know the answer to that. You'll have to answer that. Will this help or hinder new home construction in the city? Will build them to old standards improve? I don't know. We're trying to improve the standards. I don't know whether that was a good exercise or not. I think though the majority of us want to move forward with these proposals. Does anybody think we should study this a little bit longer or go forward?
I have confidence that there is a market here of move-up buyers and of younger buyers who really like this concept. And not everybody wants to buy an old house like me and my husband. So I think we should build it.
I think we've beaten the horse enough right now. I think we should move on.
I would observe too, Doug, that, most of these comments and your responses, I tend to agree with. And just so it's clear, my issue is not so much with any of these things, but with the whole principle of whether we should dictate a particular type of design. That's my objection.
Right.
To these points.
If there's a couple 100-acre housing development, single-family homes in an RMOD zoning on a piece of property around the fringe of the city that would be annexed in, you want that? You want that?
I'd like to see that new standard be set. We could do better than we've done in the past.
I agree.
There are a lot of people who will also be moving into the city.
We're nice to be a destination.
We have better tax structures than those in Frederick County. We have better schools than we do those in north and south of us. There's a lot of good reasons to live in Washington County.
Our park system is stellar.
Even in a development like this, the house that you get for the dollar that you spend compared to Frederick or Gaithersburg can't be beat.
Nope.
That's right.
Right.
How much do you think these houses would cost in Gaithersburg or lower end, the south end of Frederick with easy access to 270?
$1 million each.
You're not in my price range.
I'd say a minimum of 750 or above.
Folks, what do you want to do? You want to move forward with the recommendation?
I do.
Yes,
I'll take a motion.
If you're gonna consider the whole thing as one package, I would like to have at least the opportunity to vote no as to this particular section. I guess it's called change number 7. I mean, if my vote can be recorded that way, fine, but I do intend to vote against that. If it's all in one package, I guess I have to vote against the whole package, which I don't really object. I mean, most of the things I support.
Change number 7.
Where is that?
Begins page 16.
Yeah.
It's page 19 in my set.
Is there a desire to drop change number 7 from this package? Besides Jim?
Well,
I think Jim is suggesting that he still would have a chance to vote on all of it, but he would like 7 separate so he can say no to that and say yes to everything else. Sort of like pulling something off a consent agenda so people have a chance to vote specifically on one thing.
All right.
Well, let's accommodate Jim then, if we need to do that.
Jim, you ought to be making that motion.
Do number 7 first.
well, I can't make a motion for that one because I'm gonna make
Oh,
a
he's
motion to this.
That's right.
If somebody
Well,
else.
before you get into motions on the severing, do you have any other comments on any of the other provisions in the package? Let's save the separation motion to last. Any of the other stuff in any of the other sections of the package cause you question or concern?
Not for me.
No,
no,
Yep.
And it probably should be someone else that makes the motion about number 7. So that the motion is, we think we should move forward with number 7. And then Jim can say, I disagree, rather than Jim's motion will be, I think we should drop number 7.
Right.
And he would be the only one voting for
I
that.
won't get a second.
Well, that's true. He wouldn't get a second. He just wants a chance to say he doesn't
Yeah, I
like
just
it.
want to be on the record.
Yeah, on the record as not being in favor of that one particular item.
What's y'all's pleasure?
do we have a motion or are we still,
Well, we have one that
Deciding how to
Kathy
make it.
recommended. We have one that Kathy recommended.
can we put that on record?
That what I suggested is that someone on the commission make a motion to move forward with recommendation number 7.
Okay.
So move.
Here we
Second.
Motion made second then to move forward with change 7. Separate from the rest. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
Abstain.
And one abstain.
One no and one abstain.
5, 1 and 1. Okay.
All
Then a
right. We
motion
need
for
we need a
everything
motion
else.
for the balance. We need a
I'll make the motion to approve the balance of the changes.
Well, actually, all of them.
Oh, yeah,
All of
yeah,
them.
that's, I mean, we're moving forward, so that means that's included now,
Yes.
right? Jim's objection is there, but now the full package moves forward and we vote.
Yes. Recommendation to mayor and council that they consider and approve the proposed amendments to the Hagerstown Land Management Code.
So moved.
Second.
How about a discussion? You're still setting it up so Jim will vote against the package.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
That's okay.
that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, okay, fine.
Right?
We ready to vote?
It's consistent. It's
Who was this?
consistent.
Who was the
He
second?
voted against the whole thing and also against the specific.
Yeah, but that's not how I feel, guys.
Jim wanted to vote against just that one part
I
of
just want to
the
go against the
change.
other thing.
And then vote for everything
I'm
else.
for everything else.
Who seconded
would-
that motion?
So then we'll be making 2 recommendations to the mayor and council.
Right, right. I don't
Okay,
like that.
all right.
No,
Who seconded this motion?
Ron did.
Okay,
Which motion are we talking about?
that was the one about approving the full package. You gotta do something with that motion. Either
Yes,
withdraw it or.
Or we
vote.
can withdraw it.
yes, we can.
So let's withdraw it.
We can. So do we have an alternate motion?
So I originally moved to approve the other parts. How many numbers are there? 1 through 5?
Stand by.
Everything but 7.
The last one is 8.
So approving numbers 1 through
6.
6 and 8.
Mhm.
That sounds like a motion. Right?
Does.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll make that.
Ron, you want to second that?
Yes.
Yeah, we should have accepted the motion and then amended it back to this. But
Right.
we're at the same spot. We got there, I guess, okay. So I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion of approving 1 through 6 and 8, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Any opposed?
Abstain.
And then we now have a motion to recommend the mayor and council approve the change known as number 7.
We already voted on that.
We already did that one.
Okay, that's right, we did. Righty. Well, I'll take a
Hey,
motion.
Doug,
to adjourn.
Would you like to come with us to the mayor and council when we make our presentation on this?
I'd like to come.
Let us know.
Okay.
Ready to adjourn? We're adjourned.
Merry
Sounds like a
Christmas.
winner.
Abstain.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
all.
Christmas.
Christmas, everybody.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Sorry for being such a pest, but I do